There were no precedents to guide the founders in ruling the immense territory of the United States as a republic. Yet lack of a model didn't daunt men who prided themselves upon the originality of their achievement. Before the birth of a nation, before the ratification of the Constitution, there was a weak yet determined experiment in self-rule. Between 1774 and 1781, as the storm of revolution raged across 13 colonies, a government, unpremeditated, uncertain, and yet enduring, emerged. It was not born in marble halls, nor shaped by a powerful monarchy, but raised instead by farmers, merchants, lawyers, and soldiers who dared to govern themselves. This was the era of the Continental Congress, the states, and the first attempt to weave together a union. The year was 1774. Tensions had reached a breaking point after the passage of the Coercive Acts, punitive measures imposed by Britain in response to the Boston Tea Party. For the colonies, it was no longer simply about taxes. It was about authority, liberty, and survival. In September of that year, representatives from 12 colonies assembled in Philadelphia. Known as the First Continental Congress, it was not yet a government. It was, in essence, a council of resistance. 56 delegates, from fiery radicals like Samuel Adams to cautious conservatives like John Dickinson, met to decide how to respond to Britain's tightening grip. They issued the Declaration of Rights and Grievances, asserting that colonists were entitled to the rights of Englishmen. They organized a boycott of British goods through the Continental Association. And though independence was not yet their goal, unity was. For the first time, Americans acted as one body in opposition to empire. This was the first spark of continental governance. The spring of 1775 changed everything. The shots fired at Lexington and Concord ignited a war that could not be contained. When the Second Continental Congress convened in May, it quickly assumed the responsibilities of a national government. Without a constitution, without legal precedent, the Congress took on the powers of sovereignty. It appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. It authorized the printing of paper currency to finance the war. It negotiated with foreign powers. And it declared independence. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence transformed the Congress from a gathering of colonies into the assembly of a nation. But now the challenge deepened. How could such a fragile institution, meeting in secrecy, hunted by British armies, sustain an entire people at war? The Continental Congress functioned without an executive, without a judiciary, without the instruments of a modern state. Yet it became, by necessity, the central authority of the revolution. It directed military campaigns, often struggling to supply Washington's army with food, clothing, and ammunition. It issued loans and borrowed heavily from France, Spain, and the Netherlands to keep the cause alive. It sent diplomats like Benjamin Franklin to Paris, John Adams to Europe, and Silas Deane to secure alliances. Its committees managed every aspect of war: foreign relations, finance, Indian affairs, the Navy, and even postal services. Congress drafted appeals to the people, resolutions to the states, and instructions to generals. But it was never stable. Delegates came and went. Attendance faltered. Regional loyalties pulled hard against national unity. The Congress was often impoverished, dependent on the goodwill of the states. Yet, it endured. Against all odds, it kept the revolution alive. While Congress attempted to govern the Union, real power lay in the states. Each colony, now calling itself a state, began drafting new constitutions. These constitutions were laboratories of self-rule, often written under fire. Pennsylvania created a radical system with a unicameral legislature and broad democratic participation. Massachusetts, more cautious, established checks and balances. Virginia's Constitution, drafted in 1776, included a Declaration of Rights that would inspire generations. Governors, assemblies, and state courts carried out daily governance. They raised militias, collected taxes, and maintained civil order. In many ways, the Revolution was fought not just against Britain, but within each colony, as people debated what liberty should look like at home. The states were sovereign, yet they recognized the need for unity. They sent representatives to Congress, but jealously guarded their independence. It was a balance. Uneasy, imperfect, yet essential. In 1777, after long debate, Congress drafted the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States. It envisioned a firm league of friendship among 13 sovereign states. Congress would remain the central body, but with limited powers. It could wage war, conduct diplomacy, and regulate Western lands. But it could not levy taxes directly or enforce its laws without state cooperation. Ratification was slow. Maryland, the final holdout, demanded Western land claims be ceded to the Union before it would approve. Not until 1781 did all 13 states ratify the Articles. By then, the war was in its final phases. The Articles gave the Congress legal recognition as a government. Yet they also enshrined its weaknesses. The states remained supreme, and Congress remained dependent. Despite its fragility, the Congress accomplished monumental works. It created a continental army and navy, and oversaw their campaigns. It authorized the issuance of paper money, the Continental, though inflation plagued the economy. It negotiated the alliance with France in 1778, a turning point in the war. It managed relations with Native American nations, often fraught and violent. It organized the governance of Western lands, laying the foundation for expansion. It sustained the revolutionary cause through 7 long years of struggle. These achievements were imperfect, often chaotic, yet without them, independence would not have been possible. But Congress was plagued by problems. It lacked the power to raise revenue, relying on voluntary contributions from states that often failed to arrive. Inflation ravaged the currency, soldiers went unpaid, and supplies dwindled. Congress could not compel loyalty, only request it. Factionalism tore at its unity. Some delegates favored strong central authority, others clung to state sovereignty. Attendance dwindled, and sometimes entire sessions collapsed for want of a quorum. As the war dragged on, the weakness of this central body became painfully clear. Yet, its very survival was remarkable. In the face of hardship, Congress kept alive the vision of independence. By 1781, the American Revolution approached its climax. The victory at Yorktown, aided by French allies, signaled the end of British hopes. That same year, the Articles of Confederation were finally ratified, giving legal structure to what had been an improvised government. The Congress of 1774 to 1781 had carried a nation through its birth pangs. It was not efficient. It was not strong. But it was enduring. From 1774 to 1781, America's first experiment in self-government was improvised in candlelit halls and fought for on blood-soaked fields. The Continental Congress, fragile yet determined, acted as the government of a people not yet fully a nation. The states forged their own constitutions, while together they crafted a union under the Articles of Confederation. It was a government born not of certainty, but of necessity. It was carried forward by men and women who believed that liberty was worth the risk of failure. And though flawed, it laid the foundations of the republic to come. Commenting on the working of the Continental Congress, Professor Oscar Handlin says, "The responsibility for conducting a long war put a heavy burden upon Continental Congress, particularly it operated through intricate forms. Its business was chiefly executive. Yet it had only a presiding officer with no power of his own. Congress therefore dealt with most matters through a variety of committees. A committee of the state consisting of one delegate from each, held power when the whole body was in recess. Legislation was a function of the Congress only in limited areas, since most matters were reserved to the state. Its most important enactments were not referred to as statutes or laws but as ordinances, an indication of their provisional character. The story of America's government between 1774 and 1781 is the story of a nation learning to govern itself. Learning through trial, through struggle, and through revolution. A nation, imperfect yet resolute, taking its first steps toward independence.